Oh, it's a beautiful day in the dark part of the woods. Well, hi. How are you today? Yeah, it's good to see you looking in on us. Well, Mr. Robin, still wearing your muffler, huh? What have you been? You been out in the woods someplace? You been away from the dark part of the woods? Been off look? Oh, you have, huh? Well, has Mrs. Robin been back? She has, huh? Well, where'd she go this time? What do you know about that? She says she saw Rudy and the Gremlins getting ready for the Magic Pixies Thanksgiving party. She getting ready for yours, too? She is, huh? Well, that's fine. Gee, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad that muffler's keeping you nice and warm so you can get out a little while. I understand her shawl is doing pretty good, too. Is that right? Even went up to the snowy mountains? Wow. Hey, that's good. She see Rudy skiing again? Oh, boy. He's learning pretty well, huh? You mean to tell me he falls all the time? Hey, that's fine. Well, say, I'm going over and talk to Mr. McGee for a while because he had a rather important message. So I'll see you a little later, okay? Okay, bye. Well, Mr. McGee, what was this important message you were going to tell me all about? Here you were saying that you had something important about safety, and I just never did get around to talking about it. What is it now?
Well, gee, Pete, you see, the thing I wanted to stress was when you come to the curb, stop. That's the main thing. And then, well, now Rudy reported something to me, and I wanted to pass it on. He says that at night, sometimes he sees youngsters riding bikes, and, well, they just don't have lights on sometimes, and that's dangerous. I'd just like to have you make it a point that if you're going to ride your bikes at night, or if your big brother or big sister are going to ride them, make sure they have lights fore and aft, as Salty would say. Yes, sirree, fore and aft. That's up front and in back. Nice headlight in front and tail light in back.
Well, that sounds like a good idea to me because it can't be seen too well at night either. How about clothes? Should they wear dark clothes or what?
Oh, Pete, you know better than that. Always wear something light when you're out at night. Ah, that sort of rhymes, doesn't it? I'm a poet today, too. Say, I sure am. You know, everybody's so thankful around here because Thanksgiving's coming, and, well, I'm sort of thankful, too, Pete, for all the nice things that I've had around here in the dark part of the woods and all my friends and things. But, you know, this is the season to be thankful, isn't it?
Well, I'd say that it was at that. I imagine everybody's talking about all the things they're thankful for, but we'll get around and talk to them in a little bit. I see something behind the log here that I'd sort of like to show you. So what I thought I'd do is pick it up and let you take a look at it. This is the Hasbro Fizzies fountain. Isn't this a dandy? Boy, you can make your own fizzy drinks with your own fizzy fountain. And the fountain will last a long time. It's made by Hasbro. You can buy all the fizzy pellets you want. So, tell you what, let's take a look at it right now in this film. You get a better idea of what I mean.
Hey, there's Hasbro! What's new, Hasbro? My new Fizzies fountain. A real soda fountain for your very own. Just fill the fizzer with cold water and drop in 2 fizzies. Screw the top on tight. And start making delicious drinks. My Fizzies fountain comes with 2 fizzers, 2 soda glasses, a stirring spoon, and enough fizzies to make 16 bubbling drinks. You can get extra fizzies in 6 great flavors at your drug or food store. And my Hasbro Fizzies fountain costs only $3.50 at your favorite toy store.
Gee, that's great, Hasbro! What else is new?
My Frosty ice cream machine that makes real ice cream. That's what's new.
Hasbro makes great toys. It's fun to play with Hasbro.
And you can get your Hasbro toys at Meyer and Frank Company, downtown at the Lloyd Center or in Salem. You'll have a lot of fun with the Hasbro toys, too, making your own fizzies and having parties with the fizzy Hasbro fountain. Hasbro's fizzy fountain, I should have said. Humphrey, you look like you're just sparkling with joy. What are you so happy about? Well, this is always a time that I say, go to the house of worship of your choice and make sure you try and get Mom and Dad to go with you. So I'm always happy to say that. But we were talking about Thanksgiving and all the things that we had to be thankful for. And gee, I guess I've got more than anybody to be thankful about. Well, you have. I'd like to hear you tell me about it because I like to find out why people are thankful about things. Of course, you're not a people, are you? No, not quite. See, they used to call me Humphrey the Lonesome Toadstool, but now I guess they could call me Humphrey the Happy Toadstool because, gee, I've got all my friends here and everything's great, so I like it, and that's why I'm thankful. Well, you know, I wanted to ask you about that. Why were you lonesome to begin with, Humphrey? I've sort of forgotten about this. Well, gee, you remember I was off all by myself and didn't have any friends or anything, and then the magic pixie moved me to the dark part of the woods. So I really do enjoy it here with all my friends and everything, and we just have a lot of fun. And, you know, Wee Willie here is one of my good buddies, and aren't you, Wee Willie, huh? Gee, I guess I am, Humphrey. And, you know, I'm thankful, too, for all of my friends. But, you know, I was wondering about something, Pete. Would you answer me a question? Well, I'll answer you a question if I can. What's the question, Wee Willie? I was wondering if you could tell me. Now, I've wondered about this, and we were talking about it. What do children-type people have to be thankful for? Oh, well, they have a lot of things to be thankful for, Wee Willie. Why, children have their mommies and their daddies to be thankful for in their homes and their life at home and in school, all of their friends. Oh, they have their pets to be thankful for and all the opportunities of living in a fine country like this. Why, children-type people have all kinds of things to be thankful for. Oh, I see. Well, you know, I didn't know for sure, but I guess children-type people have the same type of things as we have, like friends and everything else, huh? Gee, that's good. Well, you know, Dopey was saying something about all the things that he's thankful for, too. Well, Dopey, you're so bright compared to everybody else. You know so many things, having lived so long. You must have a lot of things to be thankful for over the years. Oh, I'm not bright because I lived a long time. After all, I'm sort of young as far as dwarfs go. I'm only 273 years old. You're only 273 years old. Well, tell me, what are you more thankful for than anything right now? Oh, that isn't hard. Gee, I'm thankful for all my friends, of course, but right now I'm thankful because I can hear the clouds sort of swishing around, and I'll bet you something, Pete. If you look around, you'll see Mr. Elf is gonna be here because I can feel that cold chill, and I just know that he's coming, and he'll have a story for us. Well, look at that. Here comes Mr. Elf. Just like that, appearing out of nowhere. Well, Mr. Elf, how are you today? I am fine, thank you. I almost forgot to come today. I was so busy. Well, what were you busy with, Mr. Elf? Oh, we have had many problems. You see, I have been arranging for the Magic Pixies Thanksgiving party, and I must arrange for all the gremlins and Rudy and everyone to have fun and for all to be there who are invited. Well, that sounds like quite a job. Did you remember to bring us a story today? Dopey was so thankful that he got the stories once in a while that I have arranged to take a page out of Dopey's own life and bring it, thanks to Viewmaster, and You can tell the story, Pete, of Snow White and the 7 dwarfs. Say, that's a... Goodbye, Mr. Ralph. Goodbye. It was winter long ago in a country far away. The queen of that country sat working at her window. The snow lay like a white fluffy blanket on the black ebony window frame, and as she embroidered, the needle slipped and 3 drops of blood fell on the snow. The queen gazed at the red drops thoughtfully and said, "I wish my baby daughter would be as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the ebony of the window frame." Well, the queen's wish was granted. Sometime later, she had a baby daughter who even from the first had skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. So she was called Snow White. But this queen died, and the king soon married again. He was so enchanted by his beautiful new queen that he had no thoughts for Snow White. Poor Snow White tried so hard to be friendly with her stepmother, but all she got was cold looks and, "Go play with your dog and cat, don't bother us." The new queen was so vain that she could not bear, just could not bear, to think of anyone more beautiful than she. She had a magic mirror which she used to consult. Gazing upon her perfect reflection in it, she would ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is fairest of them all?" Now, if the mirror answered, "Thou, queen, as thou stand, art the fairest in the land," then all was well. If the mirror named another lady, the queen would fly into a rage and order her put to death. But Snow White grew more and more beautiful. Neglected by her father, who was hopelessly enchanted by the cruel queen, she was constantly scolded by her stepmother. Snow White found consolation in the companionship of her dog and cat and made friends with the wild birds who would alight on her hand. Snow White grew so fair that the queen was afraid to question her magic mirror. At last she could stand it no longer. She stood before it and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is fairest of them all?" And the mirror answered, "O queen, look deep into my silver glass. Behold the image of the fairest lass." The queen turned green with rage and envy, for in the mirror appeared the image of Snow White. The queen gave a purse of gold to her cruelest huntsman and told him, "Buckle on your sword and take Snow White into the forest. Return alone." The next day, the huntsman led Snow White into the forest under the pretext of finding a wounded deer. As they penetrated farther and farther into the woodland, Snow White danced merrily along, now stooping to sniff a wildflower, now pausing to listen to a chipmunk chatter. The huntsman found himself laughing at her antics, and his heart felt heavy. When at last they came to a part of the forest no one had ever seen before, he drew his sword. "The queen has ordered your death, Snow White," he said, raising the deadly blade. The poor girl shrank away in fear. "But I cannot bring myself to do it. However, your return would cost your life and mine. Flee deep into the forest and never come back." Well, after the huntsman had left her, Snow White was alone, suddenly homeless and thoroughly frightened. She fled through the woods, wondering whatever would become of her. The wild animals watched her timidly, and she drew some comfort from their presence. But as evening fell, even they left. Snow White was lost in the woods. "Gee, I remember what happened next, Pete, 'cause, you know, that's when Snow White, wandering in the woods, came upon the home of us 7 dwarves. We weren't there right at the time, but as she wandered around, that's when she found our home." That's right. Her white dove, perched on the roof of the house, could see off in the distance. It flew down, flapping its snowy wings excitedly, then flew off to the right, and then back. And Snow White followed, and soon she came upon a neat little cottage. She knocked at the door, but no one answered. She called, "Hello!" but still no answer, and so she opened the door and went in. Snow White stepped inside and exclaimed, "Why, little children must live here." She saw 7 little chairs at a little table upon which were laid 7 little plates, 7 little wooden spoons, and 7 little wooden knives. Upon the plates were 7 little loaves of bread, and there was a sweet red wine in 7 little copper mugs. By now, Snow White was so hungry that she wanted to eat everything in sight, but she said to herself, it wouldn't be fair to eat all of one child's loaf or drink all of one child's milk, so I'll just nibble and sip a little from each place. She could eat only a very little, for a long walk had made her very sleepy. Catching sight of 7 little beds standing beside the wall, Snow White decided to try them out. They were all too short, but she curled up on the end bed and promptly fell asleep. Not far away, but deeper in the forest and a long ways underground, the owners of the cottage, 7 dwarves, toiled in their gold mine. All day long they dug little nuggets out of the ground, loaded them into little cars, and dumped the yellow nuggets onto an enormous glittering pile in a secret cave. When they got home at night, they were so tired they would eat the supper they had prepared before they left in the morning, and then go right to bed. And the next morning they would get up, eat their breakfast, lay out their slippers, and go off to work. They only had fun on Christmas morning when they exchanged gold nuggets for gifts.
It wasn't near as much fun as it is here because we worked a lot too. And then, oh, gee, when we arrived home, oh, you tell it, Pete, go ahead.
Well, when they arrived home that evening, they saw at once that something was wrong. One said, my chair's out of line. The second, my plate's on the floor. The third, there's a bite gone from my loaf. The fourth, who's been using my knife? The fifth, look at the crumbs on my seat. And the sixth,
Well, my milk mug isn't full.
and the seventh,
Somebody's been nibbling at our supper.
well, the first dwarf turned around and whispered, the somebody is still here, and she's sleeping on my bed. Lighting a lantern, they crowded around to see her. They had never seen anyone so lovely. She's more beautiful than all of our gold, one of them explained. And the first dwarf slept an hour with each of the other dwarves until the night was gone. Well, the next morning, the 7 dwarves were so happy to have Snow White with them that they did not go to work at all. Instead, they stayed home and listened to her story. How they hated the wicked queen and how they adored Snow White's gentle, considerate ways. They loved her so much that when she mentioned curtains, they made her the prettiest curtains in the kingdom. Their paintbrushes were busy with bright, cheerful colors, and the cottage was scented with the flowers they brought. And Snow White cooked them a feast far different from their dry loaves of bread. Roast beef with rich brown gravy, steaming hot vegetables, fluffy biscuits, and the best apple pie they had ever eaten. They only grumbled a little when she made them drink more milk all the time, and that night she slept on a bed they made for her, the softest and prettiest bed of all. Snow White declared the next day a holiday too. They had told her how hard they worked every day in the week. So she taught them how to play blind man's bluff, hide and seek, penny, penny, who's got the penny, and 100 other games. Snow White promised to stay and keep house for them, but first she made them promise that each week they would have 1 day for play and another for rest and prayer. So Snow White washed and knit and spun for the 7 dwarves, and they all lived together in perfect happiness.
Oh, it was really great when Snow White was there, Pete. Really wonderful. But we had to warn her, too, because, well, you go ahead and tell the story.
Well, meanwhile, the cruel queen was contented. Her huntsman brought back a jeweled box. In it was a heart which he told her was Snow White's. In reality, he had taken the heart of a wild boar and put it in the box. The queen was happy. Snow White was gone, and now she was the loveliest in the land. Many weeks slipped by before she had occasion to consult her magic mirror. And finally she did. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is fairest of them all? The mirror clouded, and its silvery voice sounded, O queen, thy face is handsome still, but in the forests across the hill live 7 men so very small, and Snow White, fairest of them all. The clouds in the mirror's face dissolved, and the queen saw Snow White happily dancing with the 7 dwarves.
Gee, I got so excited thinking about that my cap flew right over on my face. Wow, keep going, Pete. This is where it gets good.
Okay, Dopey, take your hat and take it out of your head.
The queen flew into a rage and locked herself in her tower chamber. She knew the mirror never lied, and she could not bear to think that anyone lived who was more beautiful than she was. Snow White must die, and this time she would be sure. She would do it with her own hands. She took a plain green apple and floated it over a witch's brew of strong poison. Soon one side was rosy and delicious to the eye, but the red side was full of poison. Next, the queen fashioned a disguise, a mask that would come alive as long as she wore it, and then she set out for the house of the 7 dwarves.
Oh, I can't wait to find out what's going to happen. Hurry, hurry, hurry.
Well, one morning after the 7 dwarves had marched off to work, Snow White heard a cracked voice calling out,
Apples for sale, apples for sale.
Looking out the window, she saw an ugly old woman. It was really the wicked queen.
Come, girl, she croaked. Taste this apple. If you like it, I'll give you a whole basketful for a penny apiece.
Oh, I shouldn't, said Snow White doubtfully. The dwarves told me not to trust anyone.
Oh, you silly goose, said the old lady. Do you think the apple is poisoned? Here, I'll eat half of it.
She broke the apple in half, and Snow White, not wishing to be rude, bit into the rosy half. The first bite was scarcely in her mouth when she fell to the floor as if she were dead.
Gee, I thought this was going to be a nice story.
Oh, you just wait, Wee Willie, because that evening the dwarves found her lying on the floor motionless. They tried to revive her by washing her face in water and wine, but no breath came from her lips. Wringing their hands and wiping their tears away with their beards, they laid her on her bed and watched over her for 3 whole days. At last they knew there was no life left in her. But her cheeks were just as rosy, and she looked just as she had when she was alive and walking around. Well, we can't bury her in the cold ground, they said. Instead, they made a coffin of glass and set it in the forest, and they visited it every day, and one of them always kept watch. Her animal friends were always nearby, and the forest animals often visited the glass coffin.
It was really sad, Pete, because we thought maybe she was dead.
I know, Dopey, but one day a prince mounted upon a magnificent steed came up the hill upon the glass coffin. Within, he saw Snow White, who was still as lovely as she had been the day she was poisoned. He fell in love with her and begged the dwarves to let him take her away to his father's castle. And they refused to part with her for all the gold in the world. He pleaded so ardently that at last they took pity on him and gave him the glass coffin. Well, the moment he lifted the coffin, the piece of apple fell from her lips, and Snow White awoke. "Where am I?" she asked. The prince helped her to her feet, while the rest of the dwarves, summoned by the Watcher's glad cry, and her dog, cat, and dove danced happily around her. The prince told her all that had happened. "I love you," he finished, "better than all the world. Come to my father's castle and be my wife." Well, at first Snow White was reluctant to leave the 7 dwarves, but she had fallen in love with the wonderful prince, and the dwarves, however, urged her to marry the prince, but to come back and to visit them often. The prince seated Snow White on his noble horse, and they rode away to his faraway castle, where they lived happily ever after. Oh, gee, wasn't that nice? To think that they lived happily ever after.
Oh, gee, I think it's real nice, too. Oh, I'm glad it had a happy ending with everyone living happily ever after. Hey, Pete, what's that other thing you got behind the log over there? Why don't you go over and get it, and we'll wait for you right here, okay?
Well, all right, I'll just run over here to the log and get it and see what it is, because this is something you're going to have a lot of fun with, too. This is Silly Dilly. And what a lot of fun you'll have with Silly Dilly. Why don't you take a look at this, and you'll find out exactly how you can use Silly Dilly.
Remember magic wood? Sticks together without nails, screws, or glue? Now Magic Cloth joins magic wood to give us Silly Dilly. Simply press on magic cloth. Eyes, nose, mustache, mouth. It's easy. My name is Silly Dilly, but I don't know who I am. I could be a bear named Willie, or a boy whose name is Sam. I could be a funny clown, or a bunny, or an owl. And turn me upside down, I'll be an Indian with a scowl. My pieces crease and pleat and fold. They're magic cloth, you see. They'll turn and twist and really hold. The fun will be in changing me. Silly Dilly with magic cloth, only $2. And for that three-dimensional effect, buy Silly Dilly with magic cloth and magic wood for only $3 at fine toy counters everywhere.
Say, take a look at that, Pete. You can get them at Newberry's, downtown in the Lloyd Center in Eastport Plaza, and at the Pay and Save Drugs in the Lloyd Center in Eastport Plaza, and at Williams Sport and Hobbies, and that's at 8592 Southwest Barber Boulevard.
Well, say, Salty, have you been all these places, every place?
Why, of course I have. I've been everywhere, done everything. Say, hearing you all talk about Thanksgiving, say, that reminded me of one time Thanksgiving up in Maine. You know, Maine's, there's a Portland, Maine, and there's a Portland, Oregon. Well, one time I was coming in, see, I had an Indian chief friend there. That was quite a while ago, Pete. Yes, sir, back in 1693, I think. Yeah, I think it was in 93. Well, anyhow, I was going there to have Thanksgiving with this fine Indian friend of mine.
Wait a minute, Salty. We don't have time for one of your long stories.
Oh, well, this isn't a long one, Pete. Why, I was just going to tell you about Thanksgiving. See, I was going to go up the river as far as I could with my ship, and then I was going to take a longboat and go on up the river and have Thanksgiving dinner with my friend, old Chief Wahoo. Yes, sir. Oh, he was a fine feller, this chief, and he'd invited me, and I'd promised him I'd be there for Thanksgiving. Yes, sir, when I gives my word, I always makes it. So I started up there, got up the river part ways, still had a long ways to go, when that river was all froze up. Why, my ship couldn't get up, a longboat couldn't get up, Pete.
Well, gosh, how could you, how'd you do it? Did you walk?
Why, there weren't enough time to walk, Pete, even for someone as fast as me. So I'll tell you what I did. I took my longboat and I put a couple of big skates on them. Yes, sir. I put skis and skates on my longboat, rigged myself a sail, and I went sailing right up that river on top of the ice.
Oh, Salty, really? Do you do things like that?
Why, there isn't anything you can't do if you really think about it, Pete. You just got to figure out a way to do it. That's why I always say that my first mates, all you first mates, yes, sir, you can do things too, like help Mommy pick up around the house and pick your toys up and things like that. Why, keep things shipshape if you're going to be a good first mate. And remember, a good first mate can never learn to give orders until he learns to take orders from the captain of the ship, and that happens to be Mommy, you know, and Daddy. Daddy's the captain of the ship, and Mommy's the first mate, and then your first mate's next. So you've got to learn to take orders first, see?
Well, I don't know. That's all right, though. Sure nice to have had you around to talk for us and tell us about Thanksgiving the way you spent it one year. Real great. We'll see you later, Salty. Right now it's time for me to say goodbye because I have to get going. And it's time, whenever this time comes around, all I ever say is bye now, and we'll see you later, okay? And we always say bye now and God bless you.